What's up? Welcome back to another chilling chapter. Before we dive into today's twisted mystery, Nero Wolfe and the woman who remembered nothing, hit me up. What made you smile today? And where in the world are you listening from? I'm featuring your stories in the next drop, so don't be shy. Now grab your tea, dim the lights, and get ready. Because nothing in Whispers in the Fog is ever what it seems. Chapter 1. The Woman Who Remembered Nothing. It was a Tuesday morning when the doorbell rang. Not a buzzer, a bell. That alone should have told me we were in for something exotic. In our brownstone on West 35th Street, a ring instead of a buzz usually meant money, madness, or both. I was halfway through my second coffee and still debating whether Fritz's eggs had been sublime or just above average when I answered it. She stood there like someone had pulled her out of a fog and propped her on our doorstep. Mid-30s, neat trench coat, heels that didn't match the weather, and eyes, blue and wide and empty as a freshly wiped chalkboard. "Are you Nero Wolfe?" she asked. Now, I'm used to odd intros. People show up here with broken watches and broken alibis. But this one skipped right past odd and into give me a drink before you explain territory. "Nope," I said, stepping back. "I'm Archie, Goodwin, the legs of the operation. Wolfe's the brains. You want him, you'll have to wait until his orchids are properly admired, and his lunch plans are in stone." She blinked. "Do I know him already?" That pulled my eyebrows up like curtains in a breeze. "Lady," I said, "you don't even know you know him." She stepped inside like someone entering a theatre with no idea what show was playing. She smelled faintly of violets and uncertainty. I helped her out of her coat and led her into the office. All mahogany and bookshelves and that big globe Wolfe keeps purely for atmosphere. 10 minutes later, Wolfe entered, grumbling, always grumbling, unless it was about beer, orchids, or his own genius. She disturbed me, he said, lowering his bulk into the custom chair. "What is it now, Archie?" I gave him the Reader's Digest version. He turned his head slowly, like a bear deciding whether to swat or ignore, and looked at the woman. She stood when he entered, reflexive, polite. "My name is, I think it's Anna," she said. "I woke up 2 nights ago in a hotel downtown. I had no memory of who I was. Nothing in my purse except an envelope with this address." She pulled it out, creased, and handled it. My name in blue ink. No return address. Wolfe took it without touching her, gave it the full microscope treatment, then passed it to me with 2 fingers like it might carry a communicable disease. Handwriting. Female. Slanted. Precise. Ink slightly smeared. Written. In haste or on bad stationery. No note inside, just our address. "You came to us because someone told you to," Wolfe said. She nodded. "Yes. Or maybe I told myself. I just don't know. I don't know anything, but—" She faltered. "Last night I saw something. A man in a raincoat. I knew him. I don't know how, but I knew he was dangerous. She looked between us like we held the script, and she was stuck ad-libbing in the dark. I want to find out who I am. I want to know why I'm afraid." Wolfe made a noise that could have been a grunt or an operatic sigh, depending on how charitable you were feeling. "I do not find missing memory an efficient client. It is vague, laborious, and often leads to nothing but headaches and unpaid bills." That was Wolfe's version of foreplay. "But you will take the case?" she asked. He closed his eyes. I will consider it, I cut in. Look, you can't remember your name, your address, or whether you've got a cat. But you remembered to come here, and someone wrote our address for you. That means something. Wolf opened one eye. Find her hotel. Speak to the staff. Search the room if possible. I will remain here, where sanity still holds. Sure, I said, already grabbing my hat. And if the raincoat man turns out to be a figment? Then, Wolf said, you will have indulged in physical exercise, and I will have lost nothing but an hour of civility. I nodded to the woman. Anna, or whoever you are, stay put. You're safer in this chair than in all of Manhattan combined. She offered a ghost of a smile. I left, out into the spring drizzle of New York, where the taxis hissed by like irritated snakes, and nothing was ever what it seemed. And I had the feeling that this woman's blank memory was hiding more than just a name. It was Hiding Murder, Tatoi, and Chapter 2, A Room Without a Past. The Hotel Remington was one of those quiet midtown joints where businessmen stayed when they didn't want their wives asking questions. Not sleazy, just nondescript enough to be invisible. Its best feature was that it didn't ask too many questions, and based on what I found, that policy had been working overtime. I gave the front desk my most winning smile, the one I use when I want people to think I'm charming rather than nosy. The clerk was a skinny guy with hair like a mop that had given up. His name tag read Mickey, and he had the attitude of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. Hiya, I said. Archie Goodwin. I'm helping a guest of yours. Lady checked in 2 nights ago under the name Anna Doe. Ring a bell? Mickey gave me a look that said I'd just asked him to recite Chaucer backward. Room 912, he muttered. Paid in cash, alone, didn't leave much of a footprint. Quiet type. That's her, I said. Mind if I take a peek at the room? Glanced toward a back office, as if hoping a manager would materialize and tell him not to. No such luck. 5 minutes, he said, passing me a key like it was dipped in liability. Room 912 was clean, sterile and forgettable, like someone had scrubbed all traces of personality off it. A bed made military tight, a side table, a complimentary Bible, but no purse, no toiletries, no lipstick-stained coffee cups or torn receipts. If she'd been staying here longer than a few hours, she hadn't left much to prove it. I checked the wastebasket. Empty. Too empty. Either she was a neat freak with no trash, or someone had cleaned it out like they didn't want anyone asking questions. Then I found it. A small yellow tag stuck beneath the leg of the nightstand, like someone had dropped it in haste. Dry cleaning. Superior Cleaners, East 44th Street. Dated 2 days ago. No name, just a number and a time. 4:30 p.m. Bingo. Maybe not the kind that wins you cash, but the kind that nudges a case forward half an inch. Back downstairs, Mickey was chewing a toothpick, like it owed him money. Does she seem scared to you? I asked. He shrugged. Nah, just tired. Said she'd lost something. Told me not to let anyone in. Guess you're anyone. I gave him a tip big enough to fake gratitude and got out. A taxi later, I was on East 44th, staring at the kind of dry cleaner that looked like it had been there since suits were invented. Superior Cleaners had one customer inside, an old guy, fighting with a hanger. I waited, then stepped up. Afternoon, I said. You had an order 2 days ago Ticket number 9143. Can you tell me who dropped it off? The lady behind the counter looked me over like she suspected I was trying to pick up her laundry and her daughter. Why? She asked. I'm not a cop, I said. I'm helping a woman who can't remember who she is. You may have helped her more than you know. That softened her. Not a lot, but enough. Tall, dark hair, looked lost, she said. She came in with a beige coat. Pocket was torn inside. Wanted it stitched before pickup. Said she'd be back in 2 days. Sure. She give a name? No. Paid in advance. Cash. My phone buzzed. A text from Wolf, which already meant the universe was tilting. He hated texting. Return. Inquiry initiated. Translation. We had a client or a mess, or both. I thanked the dry cleaner, jotted down the pickup time again, and cabbed it back to the brownstone, mind buzzing louder than midtown traffic. Inside, the office had changed atmosphere. Wolf was leaning back with his eyes half closed in the chair that was basically a shrine to his girth. Across from him sat a man in a damp overcoat, the sort that cost too much for anyone who actually had to work for a living. The man looked like money dipped in worry. Slick grey hair, bony face, cufflinks that could blind a parrot. This, Wolf said, gesturing with a finger like Caesar pardoning someone, is Mr. Edgar Merton, a banker. Vice President, Merton corrected. Palliser and Drake. I nodded. Archie Goodwin, legs and lungs of the operation. Merton ignored me like he was allergic to commoners. He turned to Wolf. I am here, he said stiffly, because your receptionist claims you've found a woman suffering from amnesia. That woman may be my wife. That made the temperature in the room drop like a dead elevator. Anna, or whoever she was, had just gotten a name. And maybe a husband. Except Wolf, of course, didn't move an inch. Your estranged wife, he said. I deduce this from the tone of your voice, which indicates guilt rather than concern. Merton stiffened. She vanished 3 weeks ago. I reported it. The police think she left me, but I didn't want publicity. Her father is a judge. A missing wife reflects poorly. Indeed, Wolf murmured, especially when the circumstances are not flattering. Merton bristled. I demand to see her. Not yet, Wolf said, folding his hands. First, you will tell us what exactly she was running from. Merton swallowed. His hand twitched once toward his cuff, like it might hold a cigarette or a confession. I don't know, he said. Too fast, too flat. We fought. She left. I knew a lie when I heard one. And Wolf smelled them. Merton stood. Call me when she agrees to speak. You will leave your number, Wolf said, not looking up. Merton dropped a card on the desk like it was contagious and walked out. Wolf didn't move. He's hiding something, I said. You don't vanish from a marriage that is shiny unless something's cracked under the polish. Yes, Wolf said, and that something, I believe, is murder. Chapter 3. The Man in the Raincoat. I don't like coincidence. In my experience, it's just a cheap tuxedo trying to pass for logic. So when Anna told us she'd seen a man in a raincoat who felt dangerous, and then Edgar Merton, husband, banker, liar, walked in with enough damp wool to qualify as a human sponge, I started connecting dots. Wolf, of course, did not. He preferred, to stew in silence, occasionally nibbling at logic like it was a cheese platter. I'd barely closed the door behind Merton when I turned to him. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" I asked. "No," Wolf said without hesitation. "If I were, I would be in agony." "Come on," I said, dropping into the red armchair. "She remembers nothing, sees a man in a raincoat, gets scared. 24 hours later, Mr. Drenched Wool makes a house call. You can't tell me you're not at least arching a brow internally." Grunted, which from Wolf is the equivalent of a full-body nod. "She recognized the man by instinct, not by sight," Wolf murmured. "That implies a memory tied to fear, deeply ingrained. A man like Merton may provoke disgust, but fear? Not, unless he's far more than a banker. Or," I offered, "he's the reason she ran and forgot it in the first place." Wolf closed his eyes and interlaced his fingers. "Your next step is obvious. Find out what Mr. Merton's been up to while his wife played ghost." "Precisely. But be discreet, Archie. He is a man of means. Means breed reach. And reach, as you know, can strangle. I called Saul Panzer first. If New York had a library of human dirt, Saul had the library card and knew which floor to check. While waiting for him to do his magic, I decided to follow a more immediate thread. The hotel's dry cleaning stub. I still had time before the clock hit 4:30, which gave me a shot at catching whoever dropped off or picked up Anna's cleaned coat, if they showed up. I arrived at Superior Cleaners at 4:15 sharp and posted up across the street like a guy pretending to read a newspaper but actually watching like a hawk with a hangover. At exactly 4:29, a man stepped out of a Blacktown car and walked straight inside. Beige trench coat, average height, late 30s, clean-shaven, with that neat, no-wrinkle look of someone who thought sweat was beneath them. I didn't recognize him, but Anna might. He came out 2 minutes later, carrying the same beige coat Anna had worn to our place, the same inner lining with the stitched tear. That changed things. I tailed him 6 blocks on foot, no trouble. He walked like a guy with a plan, not like someone looking over his shoulder. Eventually, he ducked into a narrow brownstone with a brass plate that read Claremont Psychological Services. Well, that was a new one. I gave it 5 minutes, then walked in like I had an appointment and an overdeveloped ego. The receptionist looked up and gave me the kind of smile you use on people you think are lost. "I'm here to see Dr. Travers," I said. "Do you have an appointment?" "Sort of. Tell him Archie Goodwin's here." From Nero Wolfe. That did it. 5 minutes later, I was in a tight office with too many books and a view of an alley. The man from the cleaners was behind the desk, sipping tea like it was a ritual. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, calm as static. "Dr. Julian Travers. I assume you're here about her. That's a safe bet. She came to me once, disoriented, frightened, told me she might be being followed, but she never gave a name, paid in cash. Then she vanished. Why didn't you report it?" I asked. He raised an eyebrow. "Because she asked me not to. And as a psychiatrist, I have an obligation to honor confidentiality, even when it walks into my office without a name or a past." "And what about today?" I asked. "What changed?" She left her coat behind. I had it cleaned. I was planning to donate it to charity. After 2 days, he smiled faintly. She wasn't coming back. I could tell. She wasn't running from someone. She was running from herself. He said it like he expected me to be impressed. I wasn't. I leaned forward. Doctor, if you know anything about the man she was running from, anything that might explain her memory loss, or that look in her eyes, you better start sharing. Dr. Travers set down his tea. I suspect trauma, perhaps abuse. But without context, I can't give you more than guesses, and I won't violate her confidence, even now. I left him with a nod and a warning. If she gets hurt, Doc, and I find out you knew more than you're saying, your next patient might be a subpoena. Back at the brownstone, Wolf was still, in the office, sipping beer and not reading a book. That alone meant the gears in his brain were churning. I gave him the report. All of it. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he simply said, "You are to bring Miss Anna here immediately." "Why?" I asked. "Because," he said, "the man in the raincoat may be a doctor, or he may be a curator of her false identity. And until we know which, we are dealing with something far more dangerous than amnesia." Chapter 4. Names and Shadows. When I brought Anna back into Wolf's office, she looked different. Not in the wardrobe sense, same borrowed sweater, same vague perfume, but in the way a person holds themselves when they sense that the room knows more than they do. Her eyes kept darting, from Wolf to me back again, like she was trying to gauge which one of us would say something that might shatter the stillness in her head. "Sit," Wolf instructed, gesturing toward the red chair. "We have questions. You will do your best to answer." She nodded, folded her hands in her lap, and looked at Wolf like a student praying to pass an exam she hadn't studied for. "Miss," Wolf said, his voice heavy as always but careful, "a man claiming to be your husband visited this office today, Edgar Merton." She flinched. It was subtle, but I noticed. Her fingers twitched, like they wanted to crawl off her lap and hide. "That name," she whispered. I don't know him." I glanced at Wolf. He gave no indication of surprise. "We were also visited," Wolf continued, "by a psychiatrist, Dr. Julian Travers. He says you appeared at his office recently, distressed. You claimed to be followed." Her brows furrowed. "Yes, that I remember. He was kind. His office smelled like lavender. I didn't tell him much, I couldn't. It was like the words stopped halfway out." Wolf leaned forward slightly. For him, it was the equivalent of lunging. "Miss, I ask you now with precision. Do you recall ever being in danger, physical or emotional? Anything that might explain your condition?" "I remember." Her voice cracked. "I remember walking through a hallway, marble floors, cold, and then voices arguing, a woman crying, not me, someone else. And then nothing, just darkness, like someone turned off the world. That chilled the room nicely." Wolf nodded once. "That is helpful, but incomplete." Turned to me. "Archie, you will locate Fritz. Tell him Miss Anna will be staying in the guest room tonight." Anna blinked. "Staying? Why?" "Because," Wolf said, "if you are truly who Mr. Merton claims, your return to the world will not go unnoticed. And if you are not, then someone is already looking to make sure your memories never return." She looked ready to argue. Then I thought better of it. Fritz, loyal as ever, had the guest room ready in 20 minutes flat. fresh linens, chamomile tea, and a bedside lamp set to low. Anna retired without a word. Through her eyes lingered on Wolf, with a mix of confusion and something bordering on trust. When I returned to the office, Wolf was halfway through a bottle of brown ale and fully immersed in a stack of newspaper clippings. "Merton's disappearance of a wife," I said. "What's it look like?" He passed me a yellowed page. "Banker's wife vanishes. No foul play suspected." 2 inches of filler on page 7, I muttered. No police statement, no press pressure, and no photo. Wolf tapped a section with his finger. Note the mention of a sealed family record. Her maiden name was Hartwell, daughter of Judge Lucian Hartwell, retired, reputed, and untouchable. "Well, well," I said. "You think Daddy pulled strings to keep it quiet?" "I think," Wolf said, "that we are dealing with a woman whose absence was more inconvenient than alarming, and with a man, Merton, who has something to lose. If her identity resurfaces..." The phone rang. I snatched it. "Goodwin, Saul," came the low voice on the other end. "Got your file? Merton's got secrets all right. 3 years ago, a private settlement, anonymous plaintiff, sealed records. But I tracked the lawyer, Clive Markham, real estate fixer who dabbles in silencing scandals." "Money?" I asked. "Plenty," Saul replied. "And here's the kicker. Travers, the shrink, on Merton's board of trustees. Silent partner. They go way back." I whistled low. "Got an address?" "Sending it now." I relayed the news to Wolf, who gave a tight nod. "The Circle contracts. But the motive?" I asked. "We've got connections, money, shadows, but no crime." "Not yet," Wolf said, "but I suspect we are circling a fire, not smoke." Anna's mind did not erase itself. It was nudged, perhaps chemically, perhaps emotionally. Either way, Travers is not simply a therapist. He is a gatekeeper. Which makes Merton the architect. Precisely. Wolf exhaled. "Archie, tomorrow you will visit the Hartwell residence. Judge Lucien may prove reticent, but he has a face for decorum. Push, but not too hard. We need history, and fast. Got it. And tonight," he added, "we observe. If Anna is bait, I want to see who bites." Chapter 5. A Visit to the Judge. The next morning started grey, with that kind of city drizzle that never quite becomes rain, but still manages to soak your socks if you pause too long at a crosswalk. Wolf was barricaded in the plant room, up to his ears in orchids and indignation over someone mislabeling a Masdevallia. That gave me just enough time to grab a fresh suit, load my pockets with charm, and head to the east side, where men like Judge Lucian Hartwell resided in buildings with marble foyers and doormen, who judged you harder than your mother ever did. Flashed Wolf's card and got past the outer ring of guardians, with only one raised eyebrow and a brief once-over that said I didn't look like I was there to clean the gutters. The butler led me through what could have doubled as a museum. Grand staircase, oil portraits, Persian rugs so thick I had to adjust my step, and into a walnut-panelled study with a desk the size of a bus, and a man who might have come with it, you. Hartwell was everything you'd expect. Silver hair combed back so tightly it probably squeaked, wire-framed glasses, and a face carved from decisions. He didn't rise when I entered, and didn't offer a handshake. Just peered at me like a chess master eyeing a pawn in the wrong quadrant. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "your note said this was regarding my daughter." That's quite a statement, given that my daughter has not been seen in 3 weeks. I took the chair across from him without asking. Wolf would have been proud. Judge, I'll give it to you straighten. Your daughter may be at our brownstone. She walked in 2 nights ago. No memory, no name, no idea where she came from. Just a purse with our address and a look in her eyes that could freeze whiskey. His reaction was surgical. No gasp, no dropped glass, just the slightest movement. His left thumb flicking the edge of his blotter. I see, he said finally. And you are working under Mr. Wolf's direction. Always, I said. We're trying to help her. But your son-in-law showed up yesterday, and I'd like to understand whether we're dealing with a domestic dispute, a scandal, or something darker. Edgar is a banker, Hartwell said, not a criminal. Funny how that's not always mutually exclusive. He gave me a look that would have made a less practiced man apologize and leave. I stayed. Edgar came from money, Hartwell continued. Ambitious, polished, but it's cold. When he proposed to Madeline, yes, that's her name, I had my doubts. But my daughter was stubborn. She believed she could warm him. She was wrong. What happened? He stood, walked to a side cabinet, poured 2 glasses of brandy, and handed me one. They separated once, quietly. No paperwork, just time, apart. That was over a year ago. She moved into a rented apartment under her maiden name. I covered the rent to avoid questions. Edgar claimed reconciliation. I never believed him. And now she's missing, I said. 3 weeks, he confirmed. I didn't go to the police. She'd done this before. Vanished for a few days to clear her mind. But when the 4th day passed, I called Edgar. He dismissed it as another of her episodes. That word, episodes, he used it like a diagnosis. I believe he was grooming her into madness. That raised my eyebrows. Deliberately? I don't know, but she was seeing a therapist, Travers. I looked him up. Not reputable. No medical license. Just a license to manipulate. So you think she was drugged? I think she was isolated, gaslit, and pushed to a psychological edge. He drained his brandy. Mr. Goodwin, I've buried enough defendants in my time to know when a man is guilty. Edgar is guilty of something. Maybe not a crime the courts can prosecute, but something. Can you confirm the woman with us is your daughter? Would have to see her, he said, voice tightening. And I suspect she won't want to see me. She left this house with pain in her bones. I stood. I'll talk to Wolf. Maybe we can arrange something private. No sudden moves. I would appreciate that, he said. And Mr. Goodwin, if you find out what he's done to her, you'll have more than a grateful father on your side. You'll have an ally who's not afraid of headlines. I left him standing by the window, staring out at a city that had long since stopped caring who got broken beneath its weight. Back at the brownstone, Anna was sitting in the office, sipping tea like it was the only solid thing in her universe. Wolf hadn't come down yet, so I slid into the chair beside her. "You sleep all right?" I asked. She gave a small nod. Better than I should. I told her where I'd been. Her face didn't change until I said the name, Madeline. Then something flickered. Not recognition, not yet, but a tremor of familiarity, like music heard through a wall. "That name," she said. "It's mine, isn't it?" I nodded. It was. Her hand went to her chest. I don't feel like her. I feel like someone wearing her skin. That gave me pause. I'd heard trauma talk before. But this was deeper. Like whatever had been broken inside her hadn't healed. It had grown back wrong. Wolf entered. He didn't look at her. He just went to his chair, sat, and exhaled. "Miss Hartwell," he said, "we have your history. Now we must uncover your present. And to do that, we must bait a trap for a man who believes you are still lost." "Will he come?" she asked. Wolf finally looked at her. His eyes were cold and calm. "Oh, yes," he said, "because he thinks you've forgotten. And men like that cannot afford to be remembered." Chapter 6. The Man Who Knocked at Midnight by Wolf's Decree. The brownstone entered what I call the Stage 2 lockdown. Fritz was told to answer no calls. The front door remained bolted unless opened. By me. Enna, Madeline, if she was ready to wear it, stayed confined to the upper floor, escorted only by me or Fritz. Wolf claimed it was all in the interest of preserving clarity. I suspected it was also because he liked the drama. That night, New York's city hum turned sinister. The wind outside rattled the windows like an impatient visitor. Inside, the silence was a pressure cooker, and Wolf sat brooding in his office chair as if brooding was a salaried position. I watched from the hall window. Across the street, a grey sedan had been parked for nearly 2 hours. It lights off. No movement. I'd already jotted the plate twice and even tapped the fender on my last smoke break. Still, no reaction. Either it was an abandoned vehicle, or it was the laziest surveillance job I'd ever seen. At 11:57 p.m., the doorbell rang, not the buzzer. The bell again, just like when she first arrived. I looked at Wolf. He raised a single finger, wait, and then slowly nodded. I opened the door. There he stood, same man who picked up the coat. Same perfect part in his hair. Same raincoat without rain. But now his expression had changed. Less polished professional, more cold bureaucrat. Someone who'd delivered a lot of bad news and stopped pretending to feel bad about it. "I need to speak to the woman," he said. "No, good evening," I replied. "You guys sure like skipping foreplay." He gave a tight smile. "Dr. Travers, you remember? She left something with me. Personal. I believe returning it might help her recall. Really? Because she left that coat, and you didn't seem in any rush to return it." He shifted. Just slightly. Enough for me to know I'd hit a nerve. "I didn't come to debate," he said. "Is she here?" "That depends," I said, "on what you're really here for." "I'm her doctor. You're a psychiatrist," I corrected. "And a bad one, from what I hear." He took a step forward. "You don't know what's at stake." "Oh, I think I'm starting to." Behind me, Wolf's voice rumbled out like distant thunder. "Mr. Goodwin, allow Dr. Travers inside. Let us not waste the bait." Travers entered slowly, like he was stepping onto unfamiliar terrain. He looked around the room, books, globe, orchid shelf, and stopped at Wolf. The two men regarded each other like opposing monarchs. "I don't believe we've met," Travers said, trying to be polite. "We haven't," Wolf replied. "You may sit. I will not offer beer." Travers did not sit. "She's not ready to see you," Wolf continued. "She may never be, but I am, and I have questions." "I came to return something," Travers said, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a tiny bottle, brown glass, blank label. Benzodiazepine, he said. Low dosage, prescribed to calm her nerves. She left it in my office. I stepped forward and took the bottle from him, careful not to touch his hand. Wolf examined it through his reading lens. No label, no dosage, no record, Wolf said. This is not a doctor's bottle. This is, what, Julian? A helper? A leash? Travers's face hardened. She needed help. Wolf steepled his fingers. What she needed was the truth. What she received was fog. Dosed fog. And you administered it. I protected her. Wolf smiled faintly. From whom? Travers said nothing. She was remembering things, I said, and someone didn't like that. So you tried to reset her again. I did no such thing. Then why come here at midnight? Wolf asked. Why bring this bottle now, and not yesterday? Why wait until we had her under protection? Travers swallowed. I was asked to. By Edgar Merton? Wolf asked. Travers gave no answer. Wolf nodded slowly. Tell him this. She remembers enough, more than he fears, and soon she will remember the rest. Travers's mask cracked. Just a flicker. He turned without another word and left, his coat flaring behind him like a closing curtain. I watched from the window as he got into the sedan and drove off. Wolf spoke without turning. He will not return, but Merton will. And when he does, Wolf turned to me. We will give him the stage, and then we will close the curtain. Upstairs, Madeline stood in the hallway. She had heard everything. I remember, she whispered. I remember dinner, the wine, the pain in my head, and waking up in that room with Dr. Travers telling me I was confused, that I'd imagined everything. Wolf stood slowly. What did you imagine, Miss Hartwell? She looked up at him, eyes brimming. I saw Edgar standing over someone, a woman. Her face, she closed her eyes. Her face was bloodied. And then he turned and saw me watching. That silence, that was the sound of a murder memory, coming back. And Wolf, his face calm, but voice like stone, spoke one word. Tomorrow. Chapter 7. A Memory Buried in Wine. The next morning arrived like a quiet verdict. No banging gavel, no dramatic sunrise, just a dim, cloud-smeared sky and the city's endless hum. Madeline didn't come down for breakfast. Fritz told me she barely touched her tea, and when he asked if she needed anything, she said, "Answers." That earned her a rare second glance from Fritz, which is like applause from a man who considers seasoning a flamboyant gesture. Wolf and I were in the office. The windows cracked just enough to let in the scent of damp stone and spring grime. He sat in his chair, eyes half-lidded, as I relayed the previous night's full replay in case he wanted to hear his own dialogue again for artistic critique. She remembers a woman. Wolf. Hurt. Bloodied. Merton standing over her. You think it's a hallucination? I asked. I think, Wolf said, that memory is often a reluctant guest. But when it arrives uninvited, it rarely lies. He stood. A movement so rare, I almost offered a standing ovation. I wish to see her, he said. I led him upstairs, watching his bulk move one careful step at a time, like an emperor making a descent. Madeline was seated in the armchair by the window, her face turned toward the light, eyes focused on nothing. She didn't startle when Wolf entered. She didn't even blink, Miss Hartwell. He said softly, "You saw a woman injured, can you tell us more?" She nodded once. "It was a dinner party, 6 people. Edgar's clients, I think. I wore a gold dress. There was a pianist. I remember the chords." She closed her eyes. "There was a woman there. Blonde. Younger than the others. Edgar wouldn't introduce me. She was laughing, too loudly. Then the wine." Her fingers curled against the chair. "Something in the wine. My head hurts. I got up to leave. That's when I saw it." She opened her eyes now, not tearful, just steady, controlled, in the hall. Edgar was standing over her. Her name was Renee. He looked angry, scared, like she had said something she shouldn't. Wolf's brows knit. And then I ran. I remember the marble stairs. I tripped, then nothing. "That," Wolf said, turning to me, "is the night we need." He walked to the window and drew the curtain halfway closed, as if the morning itself had no business listening in. "Archie, locate this Renee. If she's alive, she knows what Madeline saw. If she's not, then we've got our motive," I finished. It didn't take long. When you've got Saul Panzer on speed dial and a name, the city's secrets start falling out like loose change. Renee Keller, 29, worked at Palliser and Drake. Records showed she'd left the firm 4 weeks ago. No forwarding address, no contact information. But Saul found the trail. It led to an apartment in Queens. Cheap, narrow, and with a door that took 3 knocks and a firm, "It's Archie Goodwin, friend of Madeline Hartwell," before it opened. Renee stood behind it, alive, bruised and blinking like someone afraid of the light. "She's okay?" she asked before I could speak. "Madeline's alive?" "She is," I said, "and remembering." That hit her like a storm. She backed into the apartment, motioned me inside. It smelled of takeout and antiseptic. The place looked like a temporary stop on a fast escape route. "I thought he'd killed her," she said, pacing. "That night, she looked sick. Edgar was tense. I tried to leave quietly. He followed me into the hallway, said I'd misunderstood something. I told him I'd seen enough." "What did you see, Renee?" She stopped, bit her lip. "I saw the real Edgar, not the banker, the man who doesn't like being told no. He shoved me against the wall, said if I told anyone I'd regret it, said Madeline would regret it more." She rolled up her sleeve. Faint yellow bruises bloomed beneath her blouse. "I quit the next morning, packed my things, didn't tell a soul. I thought if I disappeared, he wouldn't follow." I nodded. "Well, he's about to be followed instead." At the brownstone, Wolf was on the phone with Kramer. The call ended with a grumble, and the click of a receiver being gently but firmly judged. "Well?" he asked when I walked in. "She confirms it. Merton threatened her. Madeline saw it, and she was drugged before she ran. And the woman lives? She's breathing? And scared? Good," Wolf said, sitting again. "Fear is useful. In court. Speaking of fear, what's the plan?" He tapped the armrest twice. "We bring him here." I blinked. "What?" "Edgar Merton," Wolf said. "Invite him. Say Madeline is lucid, that she requests his presence. He will come, if only to see how much she remembers. And when he does—" He turned to the globe, spinning it slowly. "We shall present our version of dinner theatre." "And the climax?" Wolf's eyes met mine. A confession, or an unmasking, whichever he chooses to hand us first. Chapter 8. Setting the trap, Edgar Merton arrived at 6:05 p.m., punctual as a tax deadline, and dressed like a man who didn't expect to be accused of anything by the time dessert rolled around. He wore a navy overcoat that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and carried himself like a man entering a hostile boardroom. Chin high, eyes cold, hands concealed in calfskin gloves. Fritz opened the door. I watched from the end of the hall as Merton crossed the threshold with the confidence of someone who still believed the world would twist itself into polite shapes for him. "I was told she asked for me," he said. "Not a question. A challenge." "Yes," I replied, in the same way one asks for the last piece of a jigsaw puzzle before flipping the table. He didn't respond, just brushed past me like I was part of the carpet. Wolf was waiting in the office, seated in his throne, half-shadowed by the fading evening light. The room had been carefully staged, desk cleared, chairs arranged, lighting set to that perfect mid-century noir glow. The only thing missing was the spotlight. "Mr. Merton," Wolf said, barely inclining his head. "Thank you for coming." "Assume I'm not under arrest," Merton replied, removing his gloves. "No," Wolf said, "merely under scrutiny." Merton's jaw tightened. He glanced around. "Where is she?" "She will join us shortly," Wolf said. "First, I'd like to clarify a few matters, before your composure is tested." I took my usual post by the wall, arms crossed, and kept an eye on the man's hands. Nervous people fidget. Guilty people sweat. But Merton? He remained perfectly still. That, in itself, was more telling than a confession. "I understand," Wolf began, "that your marriage was strained." "That's a generous term," Merton replied. "And that you consented to psychological care for your wife." "She was troubled. I encouraged therapy. From a close associate of yours, Dr. Julian Travers." Merton shrugged. "He's qualified." "Unlicensed. That's not a crime." "No," Wolf said, "but gaslighting is." Merton leaned forward. "Is this what this is? A performance? You invited me here to lecture me on bedside manners?" Wolf steepled his fingers. "I invited you here to witness the recovery of memory and the return of consequence." Fritz opened the door, and Madeline entered. She wore a pale blue dress Wolf had borrowed from Lily Rowan's closet, the one Madeline had chosen herself that morning. She walked slowly, deliberately, and didn't look at Merton until she was seated. He froze. For a man used to power, that was his first visible crack. His eyes didn't widen, his mouth didn't move, but the skin around his knuckles turned white. "Hello, Edgar," she said. "Madeline." He stood, voice taut. I didn't think that I'd remember." Silence. "I remember the wine," she said. "I remember Renee. I remember how she looked after you, followed her into the hall. I remember waking up and hearing Travers. Tell me I was imagining things." Merton turned to Wolf. "This is absurd. She's unstable. You can't trust." "She's lucid," Wolf interrupted, "and more importantly, corroborated." I stepped forward. "Renee Keller is alive. We found her. She told us everything, including how you threatened her, how you assaulted her, and how you paid Travers to keep Madeline sedated and silent." He turned red now. "Not rage, panic. You can't prove anything. There's no evidence," Wolf said. On the contrary. I pulled the recorder from my coat pocket, clicked it on. Renee's voice filled the room, calm but trembling. Her recounting of that night, the bruises, the warning. Madeline's expression didn't change. Merton's did. He lunged too fast, maybe to grab the recorder, maybe to bolt. But I was faster. I stepped in, one hand to his chest, the other to his shoulder, guiding him back into the chair like a man parking a very expensive car he didn't want scratched. Wolf never moved. You came here thinking you could manage this, he said coldly, that she was still under your thumb, that the fog would not lift. But fog burns, Mr. Merton, under heat, and tonight it has. Merton sat there, lips parted, eyes darting from Wolf to me to Madeline. Do you know what Travers told us? I asked. That you said if she ever remembered, she wouldn't live long enough to tell anyone. No, he whispered. I didn't. I nodded toward the door. Kramer's outside, I said. We called ahead, thought you might be in a talkative mood. The knock came right on cue. Fritz opened the door for Inspector Kramer and 2 uniforms. Merton didn't resist. He stood, straightened his coat, and said nothing as the cuffs went on. Classic rich guy denial. He still believed there'd be a way out. As they escorted him out, he turned to Madeline. You should have stayed gone. She didn't flinch. I did, she said. But you followed me there too. When the door closed behind him, the room seemed to exhale. Wolf leaned back. A vile man, he said. Dull, but effective. I detest such combinations. Madeline stood. She looked at Wolf, then me. What happens now? You remember, Wolf said. That's what happens. And you rebuild, I added. The pieces might look different now, but they're yours again. She nodded. Once, then left the room without another word. Wolf reached for his beer. Archie, you may inform Fritz dinner may resume. What about the aftermath? Asked. Police, press, angry bankers? He sipped. They're not my problem, nor are they yours. And Madeline? Wolf sighed. She will forget again, but not the same way, not because of someone else. I nodded and turned to leave. He called after me, Archie. Yeah, well done. That, from Wolf, was a standing ovation. Chapter 9. The Last Detail. The next morning the brownstone was quiet, but not peaceful. Fritz was humming in the kitchen, not out of joy, but because it helped him focus when boiling eggs. Wolf had remained upstairs after breakfast, skipping his morning ritual of lecturing me about the misuse of English verbs, or the failings of modern newspapers. That usually meant he was deep in thought, or he was about to announce something that would ruin my weekend. Madeline had already left. Her father had come early, around 7:02 a.m., chauffeured in a silent black sedan with tinted windows and quiet authority. He didn't say much to Wolf or me, just thanked us, nodded at his daughter like he wasn't quite ready to believe she was real again, and helped her into the car like she might vanish if he blinked. She didn't look back. I was in the office, sorting through paperwork, when Wolf finally made his entrance. Black suit, crisp yellow shirt, expression like he'd been chewing through Latin texts all night. Archie, he said, lowering himself into the chair. We must finish. Finish? What? I asked, flipping shut the folder. The case. We caught the guy, Wolf. Merton's in lockup. Travers is being dragged over coals by the AMA. and Madeline's off to try living again. If that's not finished, I don't want to see what is." He grunted. "You recall the envelope, your one with our address?" He nodded. "Indeed. Tell me again. Who wrote it?" "A woman. Neat cursive, rushed. And yet Madeline claimed not to know who left it. No purse, no ID, but the envelope guided her here." I frowned. "You're saying someone else sent her to us?" "Yes, but who?" Wolf leaned forward, plucked a thin folder from the drawer. I hadn't seen him take it, hadn't seen him compile it. That was the thing about Wolf. When he wanted to move unnoticed, he could do it better than a magician with a grudge. Didou opened the folder, revealing a single sheet of paper, a handwriting sample, a note signed only with initials. "R.K. Renee Keller," I said. "Correct." "She knew who we were?" "Not directly," Wolf said. "But she knew Madeline needed help from someone outside Edgar's sphere. She must have searched her contact list, her connections, and found a name. Lily Rowan. That made me sit back. Lily's name again. Small world." Wolf nodded. "Renee and Lily met once, briefly, at a Palliser charity event. Lily, ever the social flurry, mentioned she once funded a detective's Christmas orchids. Renee remembered, tracked the name, found our address, wrote it, slipped it into the coat pocket during their final meeting. When Madeline was disoriented, close to breaking, she planted the seed, indeed, in the hopes that when everything else was stripped away, names, memories, fear, the paper would remain. And it did." Wolf took a sip of beer. "That," he said, "is not a deduction. That is hope disguised as logic. But I respect the attempt." I let the silence stretch. The city was waking up outside. Horns, heels, birds, and the occasional oath shouted from a second-story window. All perfectly normal sounds. But our case hadn't been normal. It had been built on things that didn't make noise. Suppressed memories, unsaid threats, and blank spaces where a name used to be. I stood and walked to the window. The street below was quiet for once. No grey sedans, no raincoats, just a woman, walking her dog and a man arguing with a meter. "So, that's that," I said. "You gonna write it up?" "No," Wolf said. "I will forget it promptly." "Why?" "Because it lacked elegance. A brute hiding behind polish. A villain, with no taste. There is no pleasure in remembering men like Edgar Merton. Even if we beat him." Wolf looked up. "We did not beat him, Archie." "She did." He went quiet after that, reached for his book, the same way he always did after a case ended, like the orchids and the literature were part of a personal cleansing ritual, one that washed away the unpleasantness of murder, betrayal, and occasionally victory. I sat back down, opened the desk drawer, and found the card Renee had written with our address. I placed it in the file and sealed it shut. Just one more ghost with neat handwriting, reminding us how easily some people disappear, and how hard it is to bring them back. Chapter 10. The Woman Who Remembered Nothing. 2 weeks after Edgar Merton was led out of the brownstone in cuffs, I found myself walking past the very hotel where Madeline had first stumbled into our lives. The Remington hadn't changed. Still quiet, still anonymous, still the sort of place where people checked in to forget something. Or someone. I hadn't meant to be there. Not really. But sometimes a case leaves a residue, and this one had left more than its share. So I took a detour, walked past the lobby window, and found myself wondering whether Madeline would ever walk past this place again, or if she'd keep moving forward, never daring to look back. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was mid-lecture to Theodore about the nitrogen content in a new orchid substrate. I slipped past the plant room and into the office, where the latest stack of mail awaited me like an unpaid debt. I sorted through the usual junk, invoices, death threats from crossword puzzle editors, and stopped when I reached a thick cream envelope. No return address. The handwriting, however, I knew well. Neat, deliberate, no longer rushed. Madeline inside was a note. Short, no embellishments, just her voice on paper. Mr. Wolfe, I've taken a flat on the Upper West Side, not far from the park. It's mine and no one else's. I bought a gold dress. It's not the same one, but I look better in it now. Please tell Mr. Goodwin I'm grateful for the truth, even if I wasn't ready to remember it. I am now. Renee and I met for tea last Tuesday. She told me I used to laugh too little. I'm working on that. Sincerely, Monsieur Hartwell Wolfe entered, as I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with the rest of the case file. He took one look at me, then sat. From her? He asked. I nodded. She's somewhere new. He reached for his beer. That's as close as one can get to justice in such matters. Kramer says Travers is turning on Merton, I added, claiming coercion. Says he regrets everything. Wolfe snorted. Regret is the last refuge of the exposed. And Judge Hartwell? Already burying the story, Wolfe said. Silence is his armor. And you? I asked. Done. Thinking about it, he paused. I have returned to the orchids. Which meant yes, but also no. We sat in silence for a moment. I knew better than to press. Wolfe hated reflection unless it came with a footnote. Have you ever thought about why she came here? I asked. Of all places. She had nowhere else, he said. We were an address in a coat pocket. That's how most clients find us. I nodded. But this one remembered. She did, Wolfe agreed, and in doing so, she became more than a victim. She became resilient. It was as close to sentiment as I was going to get from him. The phone rang. I reached for it. Nero Wolfe's office. Archie Goodwin speaking. A pause. Then a voice. Male. Nervous. Thin. I need to hire Mr. Wolfe. My brother is dead, but I don't think he died alone. Another one. Another mystery. Another descent into New York's underbelly in a three-piece suit and a fedora. Met Wolfe's eyes. He gave a single nod. Come by, I said into the receiver. We're open. I hung up. Shall I prep the office? I asked. No, Wolfe said, leaning back. Let them come to us as they are. Broken, confused, dangerous. He closed his eyes. It is the only way they ever do. Outside, the sun caught on the windows, and the city moved on. Inside, we waited. As always, for the next name, for the next memory, for the next case.